There was no crime, there was no sickness, there was no disease, there was no car accidents, there was no freak drowning, there was no ODing, there was no this or that. That's why a lot of beings live a long time, but in Lyra, during its destruction, wasn't like that. What is up, Starseeds? It's Sid, and today we are going to be talking about the first death. Why Lyra was so traumatic for so many souls. So I had this realization during a reading a couple months ago now, and I've been wanting to share this message with you guys ever since, and today I'm going to be doing it, okay? So it was so powerful when it first came to me, and it still is so powerful, so this might be emotional for you guys. And if you resonate with this, awesome. If you don't resonate with this, awesome. Take what resonates and leave what doesn't, as with all of my videos, okay? I don't even think I have to say that, but just a friendly reminder. So, Lyra was a place where a lot of souls incarnated. Like, a lot of souls who are alive on Earth right now were in Lyra. So when I give a Akashic Records reading to somebody, usually Lyra pops up in one way or another, like Lyra, Orion, Pleiades, Sirius, Aldebaran, Aquila, Procyon, Tau Ceti, Lapis, Fomalhaut. These are some popular places to have incarnated in the past, okay? These are some places that are in the computer system that I look at to make this process easier of seeing what nearby star systems people have had incarnations in. So Lyra is probably like number one common. I would say Orion and then Lyra are the two most common, if I had to pick two, to have had past lives in. And it's possible, and not everybody has had past lives in these places on Earth, but I would say the majority of them have had lives in these systems. And now you might watch videos and they'll say, you know, traits of being a Lyran starseed, and pretty much everyone resonates with them, just like all of the other ones. There might be some you resonate to more. Maybe you resonate with Arcturus more. That's another popular one. Or Antares. But Lyra is a popular one, and it's more potent for some people. People born during the Lionsgate time, people born, I mean, in general in the summer, my summer, I guess I should say, like June, July, August, are more likely to have had lives in Lyra, but people born during all times of the year, literally everyone. So more common than not, you've probably had a past life in Lyra. Maybe you haven't, but if you're watching this video, you probably have. But so even if you haven't had this incarnation in Lyra during what I'm calling the first death, a first common death, okay? This is not everybody's first death, obviously, because some people have been alive in other star systems in faraway galaxies where they've experienced death. Some people have had lives in a reptilian place where they experienced death. Some people have been alive in these other places, even maybe close by, maybe super far away. Maybe even an instance in Andromeda Galaxy where they experienced death. Because Andromeda Galaxy, while it's very loving and wise for the most part, it's also a very large galaxy. Okay, if we're talking about the galaxy Andromeda, it's big, it's diverse. Some shit has happened there. I've seen some of it in the records, in my records, and other people's records. So, generally speaking, I do readings for a lot of people who have had lives in Andromeda Galaxy that have been very loving, very harmonious, because most of them are, right? Or they had a life in ancient Orion or ancient Arcturus or ancient something, or a faraway galaxy that was super loving, because that's the most common, is to have had lives, you know, a couple incarnations maybe before Lyra. A lot of people have had. Some people, Lyra was their first life too. That's also why it's like the first death, because it was either, most people generally speaking have had these very like happy, harmonious, loving lives before Lyra, or Lyra was the first physical incarnation. That doesn't mean you're not an old soul, because I mean, one, Lyra's pretty freaking old and ancient, but also we're all the same age as a soul. Like, you were maybe just one with Source for longer, maybe you didn't break off from Source as quick as people who had incarnations in other places first, and maybe Lyra was your first incarnation. All of that is an old soul. You just chose to do angelic work in the ethers instead of incarnating physically. It's a neutral thing. It's not like a positive or a negative thing, just to clear that up. But so anyways, lyra was very traumatic for a lot of souls. And a lot of souls are pretty much over that. Some souls still have kind of that trauma signature because this was the first real death for a lot of people. And here's why. They might have experienced death before. Death, quote unquote. They might have chosen to leave their body before and go to a different body. They might have been like, okay, I'm going to be done with this incarnation now. I learned a lot. It was lovely. I would like to be put in a new body now. And that was their death for a lot of people. Just a happy kind of quitting this job and going to the next type of thing. That was their death. There was no crime for a lot of people. There was no disease for a lot of people. There was no accidents for a lot of people. In lyra, it was murder. That was the first murder death. That was the first real death. That was the first going against free will for a lot of people. A lot of people did agree to incarnate in lyra during its destruction, knowing on a subconscious or an unconscious level, but agreeing to it before the life. And even though in lyra, how I would love to do another video in the near future about like the spectrum of forgetfulness, how you do remember a lot of stuff when you incarnate in lyra. But a lot of people, I just did a reading today for somebody who that was like the one thing they chose to forget. And it was very clear in their record that, yeah, usually you remember everything consciously when you incarnate in lyra. You remember the truth about everything. It's so high vibe there. But she chose to forget that she knew the bad thing was coming. She chose to forget in that incarnation that she agreed to incarnate in a specific star system where she knew, even though she would be a kid during the destruction, she knew she wouldn't be rescued. She knew she wouldn't go out on a ship. And she chose that. For a good reason, very selfless reason, but also just wanting to experience that because she had lives there in the past. But anyways, so I see very frequently lyra being the first real death for a lot of people, and I just kind of wanted to explain why it's so traumatic, because this is how it came about. Because I was like, I've always wondered, not always, but the past few years, I've been wondering, why is lyra so traumatic? Lyra is a life that so many people have had. Yes, the Orion Wars recently, a lot of people were involved in, but the very ancient thing that so many people were involved in was lyra. And I'm like, why is it so traumatic? Why was so many people there? Why was it such a big deal? Why is there still trauma from this ancient thing in galactic history that we've had, you know, probably hundreds of lives or at least dozens of very important long incarnations since? Haven't we moved on from that? No, because it was the first death. That's why. That's why it's so traumatic. And we can still move on from this. It's not like this huge big deal, but that's why when we look back on it in Akashic Records, that's why it's still very potent and very emotional for a lot of souls, is because it was like the first real death. And that's how I like to put it and how I like to understand it, because that's how it feels. It was the first time either free will was, you know, violated, or it was the first time they were murdered, or maybe the only time. So yeah, there was no crime, there was no sickness, there was no disease, there was no car accidents, there was no freak drowning, there was no ODing, there was no this or that. That's why a lot of beings live a long time. But in lyra, during its destruction, wasn't like that. So I hope this brought up some emotions, because that is what it is supposed to do, but it's also supposed to clear those emotions by recognizing it, by accepting it, by realizing it, by remembering it, and by honoring it. So thank you guys so much. If you would like a reading with me, you can email me, sydalexandriaegypt@gmail.com, or if you're interested in my upcoming courses, 2024 is the first year for that. I'm doing astrology first, starting in March, ET races starting in June, intuition, divination starting in September, possibly self-sufficiency starting in December. I'm still debating on that one or not. I would love to do these courses every year. But it's really important that you guys email me if you're interested in those courses. They're on a donation basis, just like my readings. Thank you so much for listening. I love you guys, and peace out.